To the headlines from across India, the Singapore Health Ministry on Friday said that 853 foreign workers from packed housing dormitories were among the 897 new confirmed COVID-19 linked cases, taking the number of infections in Singapore to 12,075. A total of 853 of the cases reported on Friday were work permit holders residing in dormitories, and other 19 were work permit holders staying outside dormitories. Now, that's the confirmation that we're getting from Singapore. And joining us on this broadcast as we get voices from across the world are Preeti Dora. Preeti is an Asia columnist and founder of Asian Century Communications. Preeti, good morning. And we also have Sukanya Sadani, who's a director of Lens Bridge Capital. Now, both of them are joining us live from Singapore. Preeti, coming to you first. At one stage, we were all confident that the situation in Singapore was under control, but we've seen, especially in the last 2 weeks, the numbers spike. Now, what's the trend that you're seeing, and where are most of these cases being reported from?
So, thank you, Niranjan. Yes, I think Singapore has been one of the big success stories of Asia in the recent past. And it was really commended for the first 3 months of how it handled the crisis in suppressing the number of infections. We did not have to shut down the economy, and most of the schools and offices were open here. My children were going to school, my husband was going to office. There were social distancing measures put in place. There was a lot of testing and tracing. And we have an excellent medical system. So there's actually even today not a high fatality rate at all. But what has happened is, as you just mentioned, is that majority of the cases have come from foreign worker dormitories, and a majority of them are in fact from India. So there is a lot of concern here because the foreign worker dormitories were, in a sense, there has been a bit of an oversight. There was not adequate social distancing measures. There weren't hygienic conditions. The workers were still going to work. And so they were caught on the back foot here. And now this has exploded. I would say, though, that just even in the last 2 weeks, the government has been extremely responsive, and they have put in all the safety measures in place in the worker dormitories. The Singapore Prime Minister has himself given 2 addresses to the migrant workers and their families in South Asia, saying that they will be taken care of, they are being medically treated, their wages, they will be, sending it back to their families. And there has been nutritious food and all kinds of support that has been given. But yes, this is of concern because just in March, the case was, I think, around close to 270, and now we have crossed 12,000. Yeah.
Okay, Sukanya, looking at the number of cases and going through the details of, where all of these cases are being reported from, I think as far as dormitories are concerned, picking up some more details. In fact, Singapore is taking measures, sealing more dormitories as COVID cases rise among foreign workers. Now, what sort of measures are you seeing? Now, if they are sealing more dormitories, what about the people in these dormitories? Are they being shifted out, or are they being confined to these, cramped spaces?
Thank you, Niranjan. I think I agree with what Preeti said, and what you're saying is absolutely right. We've seen an explosion in the cases with migrant workers living in dorms. Having said that, although we caught in the back foot, I think we've done with private organizations and the government bring the best resources to bear. What they've done, the way I understand it, is they've managed to actively test initially, and then isolate those that are testing positive in these dorms. All the dorms have been declared to be isolation zones, essentially, which means that people living in these dorms don't come in and go out. Everything that's needed for them in terms of everyday living and comforts, to the extent possible in the current situation, are being taken care of, largely by the government, the Ministry of Manpower and the Multi-Ministry Task Force, but also by private initiatives and organizations in Singapore.
Yeah. And Preeti, we're seeing that a large number of people who are directly affected at dormitories, and the number of cases as well. I think there's a large number of Indians and Indian origin people who are directly affected, and I think that directly concerns India and those who are back home and watching this broadcast. What sort of help are they getting in Singapore?
I think they're getting a tremendous amount of help. In fact, this situation that has been created unexpectedly, I'm hopeful is going to result in much better working and living conditions for these workers. The government has taken cognizance of them. In a sense, they were a neglected community to some extent here, because Singapore, as you know, is a very first world country. But the workers here were not very well taken care of. It was of concern to us, and many people like me and my friends and peers have been talking about how we can help. So a friend of mine who's been working with them has been given $2.2 million by a bank here called DBS, and to help with these migrant workers. So I think that's a really big response from the private sector. And also all of us in the community are personally doing voluntary donations of food and data cards and every possible help that these workers need.
Yeah.
So I don't think, actually one of them posted saying that they could not have been treated better in India, and they are in a sense grateful to the government here that they are here, because there's a very systematic way of looking after them, and the people who are infected are moved to different dormitories, and people who are in the dormitories, their living conditions have significantly gone up in the last 2 weeks, I would say. And this shows the speed of response of the Singapore government. You know, one can regret it, but one can also learn from it. And I would say that the Singapore government has very quickly learned from it. And there's been probably a 200% change in the worker dormitories conditions that initially led to the virus spreading amongst them.
Okay. And Sukanya, in terms of yeah, go ahead. I think you want to make a point. Go ahead.
I just want to say, Niranjan, just to put this in perspective, as of today, I think Singapore is about 12,000 cases. Now, the biggest uptick has been in the last week or so, where we had an average about 1,000 new cases, and more than 96 to 97% of these cases have come from dormitory workers. So the community-wide spread is not as large. And because the government has taken enough steps to isolate these dorms and do what's needed in terms of medical and personal and emotional care for these workers, one's hopeful that this is a data-driven approach, this is a compassionate approach, and this is a government that holds itself accountable, albeit slightly late. I'm pretty hopeful that the situation will get under control pretty quickly.
Okay.
I also just want to add to what Sukanya said, Niranjan, that there has been 3 budgets in the last 2 months. And I think the strategy here of the government is to save the economy to the extent possible, and while taking care of public health. So we've had like $60 billion worth of boost that has been given to the economy, and it has been lauded as one of the best budgets in the world, because companies are being encouraged not to let go of workers, and the government will subsidize, part of that salary, and so that people are not let go. So while the unemployment rates have gone up, but not as much as they would have. There's also been direct cash transfers to construction workers and Uber drivers and all kinds of, workers in the restaurant industry who don't make that much money. And there has been a quick succession in budgets that have come through in recognition of what else is needed, where else can we pump the money, how can we keep the economy going, how can we not bleed the jobs as much as possible. And I feel that this is something perhaps that India can learn from. I think in India we've had a budget, but it has been only a one-time budget, and there's not enough being done to save jobs. At the end of the day, it's equally important to save jobs as it is to save lives. So I think Singapore is a good example to follow on that.
Yeah. Okay, it's been a good chat, and hopefully Singapore recovers faster. And we know that it was initially very few cases were reported, but there has been a spike, which has been a little bit of concern. And more so, many people in India also worried about their family, their loved ones. Many people watching very closely what's happening in Singapore, the dormitory situation. But both Preeti and Sukanya saying that the situation more or less seems to be under control for now. Thank you both for speaking to Republic TV this morning. Preeti, Sukanya, stay home and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You too.